It was one of those chilly autumn mornings when the city seemed to move faster than people's hearts. The streets were lined with men in crisp suits and women clutching their coffee cups, all lost in their own worlds, their own ambitions. But among that rush, a woman stood still, a worn gray hoodie pulled over her head, jeans torn, not by fashion, but by time, holding a small boy no older than 4. Her eyes weren't looking for pity. They were searching for a seat, a breath, a pause in the chaos of survival. She spotted an empty bench in the park, one side occupied by a man in a navy blue suit, shoes polished enough to reflect the sky. She hesitated. The boy in her arms whispered softly, "Mommy, can we sit?" Her voice trembled as she replied, "Let's ask." Then, with all the courage she had left, she approached and said in a voice fragile but steady, "Can we sit here?" The man looked up from his coffee, paused for a heartbeat, and said with surprising warmth, "Please do. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of humanity, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that good people still exist." The woman's name was Lena. Just a few months earlier, she had a small apartment, a stable job at a bakery, and dreams that seemed modest yet bright. But life has a way of unraveling without warning. The bakery shut down due to financial struggles, and her landlord, unsympathetic and cold, gave her 2 weeks to leave. With no savings, no family nearby, and a child depending on her, the world quickly turned from routine to survival. Lena had been living in and out of shelters, her nights a blur of cold sidewalks and uneasy safety. Every morning, she would try to find a warm place to rest, often lingering near cafes or parks, pretending to wait for someone so she wouldn't be asked to move along. That morning, exhaustion hung heavy on her shoulders, but she tried to hide it from her son. The boy, Eli, clung to her, sensing his mother's weariness. Even I didn't fully understand it. The man beside her, his name was Michael Reynolds, looked every bit like the success story people dream about. A millionaire entrepreneur known for his sharp instincts and confidence. He was a man who built empires and rarely looked back. But that morning, when he saw the tired woman and her child sitting beside him, something in him stirred, something hadn't felt in a long time. For a while, neither spoke. The park buzzed with life. Children laughing in the distance, leaves rustling, the faint sound of a street musician playing a melancholic tune. Lena sat quietly, trying not to disturb the man, though she couldn't help but notice how peaceful he looked, sipping his coffee without a worry in the world. Eli played with the loose string on his mother's hoodie, whispering something that made her smile for the first time that day. Michael glanced at them again, noticing her cracked hands, the faint bruises of life's cruelty hidden beneath a brave face. "You and your little one." "Okay," he asked gently. She hesitated but nodded. "We're just having a rough time," she said softly, her eyes avoiding his. "I understand," he replied, even though he wasn't sure he truly did. As the minutes passed, Lena's story unfolded, not in grand words, but in fragments. She mentioned losing her job, her home, and how she'd been trying to find something stable again. She wasn't begging. She wasn't asking for help. She was simply sharing as if the weight of silence had become too heavy. Michael listened quietly, feeling something shift inside him. He had once come from nothing, too, long before success polished his life into perfection. But he had forgotten what those early years felt like until now that he offered to buy them lunch, and after some hesitation, Lena accepted. They walked to a small cafe nearby, Eli's tiny hand gripping his mother's fingers. The staff looked uneasy when Lena walked in. Her clothes were worn, her shoes scuffed, but Michael's presence changed their tone instantly. He ordered sandwiches, warm soup, and hot chocolate for Eli, who couldn't stop smiling as the steam rose from his cup. As they ate, Michael found himself asking questions he hadn't asked anyone in years. "What did you do before? What do I want to do next?" Lena spoke of her passion for baking, how she used to wake up before sunrise to make bread and pastries. There's something beautiful about making something from nothing, she said. Just flour, water, and patience, and it becomes something that feeds people. Michael smiled, realizing that her words carried a depth of truth. Truth he hadn't heard in boardrooms or business meetings. When they finished, he paid the bill and offered to walk them to the shelter. But as they reached the street, he paused. "Lena," he said, "how would you feel about coming by my office tomorrow? I might have something that could help." She was caught off guard. "Your office?" she asked, unsure if she'd heard right. "Yes," he replied. "I run a few restaurants and bakeries around the city. I could use someone who knows how to bring heart into what they bake." Lena didn't know what to say. For weeks, she had been invisible, just another face people turned away from. And now, someone was offering her a chance. She thanked him quietly, tears swelling in her eyes, though she tried to hide them. Michael simply nodded and said, "Be there at 9 o'clock. Don't worry about anything else." That night, Lena and Eli slept at the shelter with something they hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, her mind racing with doubt and gratitude. What if I didn't mean it? What if it was pity? But even the faintest chance was enough to make her believe again. The next morning, she arrived at Michael's office, her hair brushed, wearing the cleanest clothes she had. When she stepped in, the receptionist looked puzzled until Michael came out of his glass-walled office, smiled, and said, "Lena, you made it." He handed her a simple uniform, an apron with the logo of one of his bakeries, and said, "Let's get started." The first few weeks weren't easy. Lena was rusty, slow, nervous, but her bread had something special: warmth. Customers began to notice. They didn't know her story, but they could taste the heart she poured into her work. Michael often visited, watching quietly as she kneaded dough with her sleeves rolled up, humming softly while Eli sat in the corner coloring. Months passed, and life began to take shape again. Lena found a small apartment, started saving, and even enrolled Eli in a preschool nearby. She would often think back to that day in the park, the moment she asked, "Can we sit here?" A question so small yet powerful enough to change everything. One evening, as the bakery closed, Michael stopped by. "You've done well, Lena," he said. "The customers love you, but there's one more thing I'd like to offer." She looked at him curiously. "How would you feel about managing this bakery?" She froze, her hands trembling slightly. "Me?" she whispered. "Yes, you," he replied with a smile. "You've earned it." Tears filled her eyes as she nodded, unable to speak. That night, after Eli fell asleep, she sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. She thought about how close she'd come to giving up, how one simple act of kindness had rewritten her story. For the first time in years, she prayed, not out of desperation, but gratitude. And Michael, he realized something, too. Success had given him wealth. But that day in the park reminded him what it meant to matter. Kindness didn't just change Lena's life, it changed his. He began to visit shelters, fund community kitchens, and create programs for people trying to start over. He would often say in interviews later, "I didn't help her because I'm rich. I helped her because once someone helped me." And that's how kindness keeps the world going. Months later, the same park bench became a familiar spot. Lena and Eli would often sit there on weekends feeding birds, laughing. Sometimes Michael would join them, coffee in hand, no suits, no titles, just people sharing time. On 80, Eli looked up at him and said, "Uncle Michael, this is our favorite bench." Michael smiled and said softly, "Mine too." Life doesn't always change in grand moments. Sometimes it shifts in the quiet courage of a mother asking, "Can we sit here?" and a stranger choosing to say, "Please do." If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the good still left in this world. Special request in the comments.